I now give the floor to my co-host, Dr. Palier, for the Q&A portion.
Okay. Good morning. So we have here a number of questions in the Q&A box. First, question from Dr. Asuncion Raimundo for Dr. Leach. Hi, Jan. I'd like to read the question and the comment. Hi, Jan. Nice to see you again, even just virtually. Excellent presentation as usual. Thanks for accepting to talk in this session. So the question is, since ABA or ABA gene is important, do plant breeders, I can't read, do plant breeders consider it in their plant disease resistance programs at present?
Hi, Sean. Thanks for the question. I hope everyone knows that Sean and I have been close friends for a long, long, long time. So it's good to hear from her again. Yes, ABA genes are important, and we think that this is a key node in the defense response pathway. Usually breeders take ABA responsive and biosynthetic genes. They take them into account in breeding for drought stress or heat stress or cold stress, not so much for disease. And I think it's because we've not seen this association played out so closely. It's known that they're involved in disease, but it's not known to what level. So I think this opens up the door to a lot more questions and a lot more research. I wish I were 20 years younger.
Okay. So this question actually was upvoted 4 times. Another question from Dr. Ronilo Jose Flores for Dr. Evangelista. Thank you for your presentation. Were you able to identify some other active dominant proteins in the seed protein fractions via HPLC or GCMS or LCMS maybe? Thank you.
No, because at the time that we were doing the experiments, that was these are all unknown proteins. So we were doing essentially the primary analysis to give some indication of how much protein there is it extractable, what are some of the critical functional properties of the protein. Now that we have established those, we can certainly perform more in-depth studies of the other components of the protein. But at the time that we performed the experiments, no, we did not go in depth.
Okay, thank you very much. So this question was also upvoted 4 times. Another question for Dr. Leach. Thank you very much from Emmanuel Gandalera. So he said, thank you very much, Professor John Leach. I see that we have a dilemma with either enhancing heat tolerance in plants or enhancing pathogen resistance. Situationally, the Philippines is located in the tropics and experiences high temperatures, and at the same time, farmers are affected by bacterial blight. Based on your team's research, and for some researchers that we have here, may you give us some insights on how are we going to proceed with solving this problem? Thank you very much, and we really appreciate your talk.
Well, thank you for the question. This is an excellent question because we are facing a dilemma of if we make the plants resistant to one stress, do we make them more susceptible to another kind of stress? And I think we're just beginning to grasp that. But obviously in nature, the plants have, historically, we have done a reasonably good job of breeding for resistance. And I think it's probably done blind, it's not blind breeding, they're wonderful breeders, but it's because they're selecting for drought tolerance in fields that have disease. So they have, by the very way that they select for the resistance, enhanced resistance to disease or enhanced resistance to drought in the environment and in different environments, they've helped to overcome this problem. What we need to understand if we're to keep ahead of it is what are the reasons, what's the physiological basis for the plants being adapted to both stresses at the same time, so that we can keep ahead of it and think about it. And you know, we really don't know the answer to a lot of that, at least I don't. I'm sure someone smarter than me does, but we really need to think about this very carefully.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Leach. One last question in the interest of time. We can only entertain one last question from Dr. Cadiz herself. For Dr. Leach, why ABA? How about ethylene, for instance, which is also a stress hormone like ABA?
That's an excellent question. So why not other stress hormones like ethylene? It's interesting, and in the paper that we published that contains this research, we did find that there was upregulation of ethylene, of course, in the heat stress, as you would expect. But interestingly, it was not upregulated in the disease stress or in the resistant interactions to the same levels that it was. I don't know why that is. There must be some crosstalk with the hormones. Another interesting hormone is salicylic acid, which is a known disease resistance protein, which was, of course, upregulated to a certain extent in the resistant interactions, but not as much with XA7. A lot of interesting things have come out of this, and there are a lot of things that we didn't expect, like why not ethylene? Why not more response with salicylic acid? And what about jasmonate, which is another stress response protein? So we have a lot of questions because we're looking at dual stresses, which we hadn't done before.
Okay.
Sorry, I have no answers.
Okay. Maybe we can entertain two last questions. Just a quick question here from Lani Lariosa. What is the harvest result rate of your research?
So far, we don't know. It hasn't. Actually, Nolly Veracruz would be a better person to answer that question because she was in the Philippines at Erie for years. I think the answer is that we're beginning to understand that the XA7 resistance gene is really important for many reasons. It's very durable, and Nolly has been a leader in that area. So I think we can't take credit for a huge amount of progress or yield rates increased, but I think getting these understandings is helping direct what our genes to put into the plants, and in the future, hopefully, what our genes we put in as the climate changes. But I don't think we can take credit for a huge amount of yield increase yet.
Okay, so one last question from Paulo Arejola. We are currently developing the market for microbial inoculants and biostimulants. We are also trying to educate the farmers on the use and inclusion of these products in their farming systems. What is your opinion regarding these microbial inoculants and biostimulants regarding their effects on the overall plant health? Thank you.
And I think it's really important that we look to microbial inoculants and biostimulants more into the future. But again, we need to think about the system. So what I would strongly recommend before marketing these organisms, which are important, modification of the microbiome is going to be critical to success in the future. But we need to think about what, if you apply these microbial inoculants that enhance plant growth, what other have you tested what other stresses these might impact? Maybe they will help you with drought stress, because we know that some microbes help plants tolerate drought stress. But I think it's wise to look at other stresses before we go too far down the path of using them. I think this is a very important part of our future, is using microbials.
And one last question for Dr. Evangelista from Dr. Flores. Thank you for clarifying my questions a while ago. It would be great to have a library for pennycress, since it is considered to have medicinal properties. Is this something that your team is considering to research on?
No, because the medicinal properties is beyond the mission of our research projects in the unit. But I have read that it does have medicinal properties.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much. I'm giving the floor to Professor Cadiz for our next speaker.
Thank you, Rachel. The question on microbial inoculant, I think, could be answered better by another speaker, Dr. Virginia Cuevas, later on. So